Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Gayle, and if it's Wednesday, you know it's time for your gem nugget. This is your gem nugget for today. Trust Him even when you can't trace Him. Trust Him even when you can't trace Him. I tell you, I got that from one of my good friends, one of the friends that I love. Her name was Sharon Dixon, and she was a victim of domestic violence. She was in a wheelchair because she was paralyzed from the waist down. I wrote a book about her, Only by the Grace of God, the story of Sharon Dixon, and hopefully it will be a play on next year. But you know, she would call me sometimes, and in the middle of the conversation, she would say, "Gayle, can I tell you something?" And every time she said that, I learned that she was getting ready to tell me something or about how God blessed her in such a tremendous way or such an awesome way. And every time she said, "Gayle, can I tell you something?" Because she would end up saying, "You know what? I didn't know how God was going to bless me or how God was going to bring me out or how God was going to do certain things, even though she was in a wheelchair and she couldn't walk. Sometimes she was blessed beyond me, even sometimes, although she was in the wheelchair. And she would end up saying, "You know, Gayle, you got to trust him even when you can't trace him." That's why 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, "We walk by faith and not by sight." We have to trust him even when we cannot trace him. You know, we have gone through a lot of things and we'll continue to go through a lot of things. Who would have known that we would have gone through a pandemic? Who would have known that all of this violence and everything was going to erupt? Who knew that gas would be sky high, that we couldn't hardly pay for it, or food going high? Who would have known that looks like we may be going through another recession? But in the midst of that, you have to trust God, even though you can't trace Him. We have to walk by faith. We can't see everything, we can't figure out everything, but we walk by faith. You know, I'm reminded of Ruth in the Bible. Ruth was a Moabite. She was a foreigner, and she ended up being a widower. She lost her husband. She lost her father-in-law, and her mother-in-law had to come back to Bethlehem, and she had to go out and work in the fields. But she said, "I'm going to trust God." She told her mother-in-law, "Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. Wherever you go, I'll go." And she ended up from working in the field to owning the field, and she didn't even see it coming. That's what I talk about. That's what I mean by walking by faith. You got to trust him even when you can't trace him. See, I see it like this. You know, I put it in this way because, you know, we're in a movie. You know how you go to the movie and especially if it's an action movie, especially if it's a scary movie, and you can see that the person is getting ready to go into danger, but the person in the movie, you know, they don't know what's getting ready to happen. But God is like us. We can see what's going on. He can see the beginning because he's the author and the finisher. He knows how the story ends. And so we can trust him that he will take us through whatever that we need to go through. That's what Sharon meant, says when you got to trust him even when you can't trace them. And that's what faith is all about. You know, the definition of faith in the Bible is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When we are God's, we have to trust him that he's going to do what is best for us. But we have to walk by faith. We cannot try to see everything. We can't try to figure it out. But when we walk in faith, I tell you, God will bless you. God will bring you out. Sometimes you can't trace it. Like Sharon used to tell me, you got to trust him even when you can't trace him. So that is my gem nugget for you. Put your trust in God. And see, when we trust God and we walk by faith, now when we walk and we trust. That's an action word. We have to do those things that demonstrate to God that we trust him, by obeying him and by loving others, and keeping his commandments. That's how we trust him. That's how we walk in faith, um, without seeing. So you be blessed today, and trust him even when you can't trace him. You have a blessed day.